Hi, as introduced, I'm Diane Brown. I'm from the Overseas Private Investment Corporation, and I'm a senior environmental analyst with OPIC. And I'll talk a little bit off topic today. I was going to spend some time just generally letting you know who OPIC is in the event that some of you may be unfamiliar with OPIC or have us confused with the oil people, who we are not. I will talk about our greenhouse gas policy and how we implement that policy, and then talk a little bit about how we've seen that policy change some of the projects we're seeing in our portfolio, and also in terms of the kinds of information that we're requiring that some of our investors provide to us now as a result of the greenhouse gas policy. For anyone who is unfamiliar with OPIC, we are, as are the others that are here today, a U.S. government agency. Our bread and butter is development finance, and our goal is to mobilize participation of U.S. private capital to support development in less developed economies. We have a current portfolio of about $13 billion, and we're opened in just about 150 countries throughout the world. We have a number of products that we offer through OPIC. Our largest is our debt financing, which ranges anything from our large structured finance type deals, big infrastructure deals, to small business loans. We also provide insurance and coverage for U.S. investors for risk of expropriation and political violence and currency inconvertibility. We also have an investment funds program where OPIC provides debt that's matched by privately raised equity to support investment funds. In order to take part, or in order to receive a loan or from OPIC or insurance, we have certain criteria that you have to meet. And essentially, a project has to have at least 25% U.S. ownership. If it's an insurance project, then there has to be greater than 50%. For our investment funds, the funds have to be managed by a, is that better? The funds have to be managed by a U.S. manager and involve a U.S. equity investment. I'm with, OPIC also has some fairly stringent policy requirements, and that is the group that I'm a part of. It's our Office of Investment Policy, and at OPIC we look at things from the labor and human rights side. We look at economic impact analysis. This is for each and every project that comes to us, no matter what the size. And economic impact analysis is a group within my division that would look at what the impact of a project would be on the U.S. economy, and also what the development impact would be of any project. And then, of course, there's my group, which does environmental and social policy analysis. And as I said at OPIC, in order for any of our loans to go through, you have to receive clearance, or what we call an environmental clearance, from each of these different groups. Our environmental policy has a number of unique aspects, and among them, they're listed on the screen, but we have certain categorical prohibitions, so there's certain projects that we do not fund. As I say, there are a number of others there. And then, of course, we have one of our later policies, which is our greenhouse gas cap, which is what I'm here to talk about today. And essentially what that does is constrain our new carbon additions to the portfolio. So to talk about the policy, we introduced the policy back in 2007, and we call it both greenhouse gas and a clean energy initiative. There are, I say, threefold objectives, but it's really probably more than that. The objective is, of course, to support the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions with OPIC-supported projects, to promote energy efficiency and conservation, to encourage carbon sequestration and land use and forestry practices, and then something that I didn't list here, which is also to maintain a greater transparency in terms of the reporting of greenhouse gas emissions that are associated with the projects in our portfolio. The policy itself is as follows. OPIC is committed to reduce our direct greenhouse gas emissions associated with our projects, with those projects in our active portfolio for which we have an outstanding balance, by 30% over the next 10 years, so that would be by September 30th of 2018, and by 50% over a 15-year period. In order to do that, we have established, or the first thing we did was establish a baseline of what the emissions are in our portfolio today. We looked at our baseline is based on our active portfolio as of June 30th, 2008. And we hired an independent consultant, PACE Global Environmental Services, Energy Services, to help us calculate and verify what our baseline emissions are. So based on the work that PACE did for us, we have estimated that our greenhouse gas emissions in the portfolio are about 50.5 million tons of CO2 equivalent. And it's from that we will make the reductions over the next number of years. So as you can see from the chart up on the screen, the 10-year target is 15.4 million. The 15-year target is 25.2 million. And that's also graphically shown up there on the screen. So in order to reach those reductions, we've had to develop what we call an internal management strategy, and we've put together what we call our annual cap. And essentially what that is, these are the number of greenhouse gas equivalent emissions we can add to the portfolio each year in order to meet and still meet the reductions that we've committed to. And that works out to be about 1.3 million tons per year. So of all the projects that we add during a year to OPIC's portfolio, the greenhouse gas emissions of those projects cannot exceed 1.3 million tons. If we don't use all of that up within 1 year, should we not have the number of projects that would commit to that number of emissions, then we can roll that over to the next year. So as you can see, that would have a fairly big effect on our portfolio, which I'll talk about in just a little bit. Basically, greenhouse gas emissions from the projects in our portfolio are coming from our power plants, our thermal power plants. We also have some larger industrial projects, cement would be one, and some of our oil and gas projects. As I said, in addition to reductions of greenhouse gases, we are also looking at promoting renewable and clean energy. And we've developed certain definitions that we abide by. For those who may not be familiar with it, OPIC has just recently changed what used to be our old environmental handbook, and we've adopted a new strategy, our environmental and social policy strategy, which is available on our website should you want to take a look at it. So essentially, in order to, the way we look at renewable projects and the accounting methodology we've put together for greenhouse gases is essentially any renewable energy project, be it wind, solar, geothermal, hydro, we do not include nuclear in that, is assigned a greenhouse gas emission level of 0. But that's only if there's not a fossil fuel component to that project. So for example, even if you're a biofuels project and you're burning one of the fossil fuels in the boiler, we would count those emissions towards the cap for that year. We also have a definition for renewable fuels which have to meet some additional criteria. And these are essentially based on EPA's renewable fuel standard. So in order to qualify as a renewable biomass and be assigned that 0 level, fuels have to be produced only from renewable biomass. It has to be a fuel that's being used to replace or reduce the fuels in the transportation, heating oil, jet fuel, or the sectors. Also, one of these fuels would have to meet life cycle greenhouse gas emission reductions thresholds when you compare them to the average gasoline or diesel that they're replacing. And those, as I say, those percentage requirements are set in accordance with EPA's renewable fuel standard and are at least 20%. Additionally, for a project to be considered a clean energy project or a clean energy technology and be assigned that zero greenhouse gas emission level in our accounting procedures, you must demonstrate through independent third-party verification that that you have a reduction that's greater than 20% over what would be the baseline for that project. As I said, in addition to just some of the components of the policy itself, we've also revised and expanded on some of the tracking requirements. We track and report for every project in our portfolio that exceeds 25,000 tons of CO2 equivalent per year, what their greenhouse gas emissions are. We also report that annually, and we report that annually. And again, all of those, if you're interested, those are all available on our website. And finally, we also report on all of those investments that fall into our renewable energy or that are environmentally beneficial. If you don't meet our renewable standards, it doesn't say that that's a project that OPIC won't support. It just wouldn't count as part, you wouldn't receive that zero emissions, and it wouldn't count as part of our renewable reporting. Some of the changes for our investors. New project applicants, as I said, we've recently adopted a new environmental and social policy, and as part of that, OPIC is now adopting the IFC performance standard. So some of these changes are the policy statement was just adopted as of August of this year, so that's relatively new for us. So some of these requirements are being coupled with some of the requirements in the IFC performance standard, especially performance standard 3. So for any new project, an applicant has to now identify and implement any technically and financially feasible cost-effective measure for improving efficiencies for energy consumption, water, and other material inputs. Applicants also have to demonstrate that measures to reduce significant project-related greenhouse gas emissions have been evaluated, and that technically and financially feasible options and cost-effective measures were incorporated into the design of their projects. Also, projects that are expected to produce emissions that exceed 25,000 tons, we require the investor themselves to quantify and to report them to us, and then we subject them to independent verification. And finally, any project that we finance or insure in an energy-intensive sector has to meet energy efficiency guidelines and benchmarks that would be established by any of the international organizations, and or develop an energy management plan to show how you would achieve those benefits. Oops, sorry. So in summary, how has our new policy affected the portfolio? Well, the effect has really been pretty huge. We see none or very few thermal power projects as a result of the policy. 1 million tons per year of CO2 equivalent does really not allow for it would not even really support one medium-sized gas-fired power plant. So that's been a huge or a very significant change in the portfolio. Additionally, and at the same time that we implemented the greenhouse gas policy, we've also, OPIC has had a strategy to increase or also to promote renewable projects. So I can't attribute all of this to just the greenhouse gas policy, but we've seen just a huge increase in the number of renewable projects. In addition to that, in 2008, OPIC's board approved about $500 million in financing for 6 new private equity funds whose goal it is to invest in clean and renewable energy projects. In total, we have about 215, I think, megawatts of renewable power in the portfolio now, and that's expected to expand very significantly over the next few years. In addition to that, we see more clean and energy-efficient projects. Most housing projects or office buildings, of which we do quite a bit of, will frequently come with many, many measures that or attempt to show that they're being built they are green buildings. So essentially, that is what I had in mind to talk about today. That's the policy at OPIC, and I would be happy to answer any questions should anybody have them.